Okay, let's dive into this. Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're unpacking an ancient story that carries some incredibly modern and honestly revolutionary implications. We're going to be pulling from a profound excerpt of the Mahabharata, which is one of the greatest epics of ancient India. We're looking at a high-stakes encounter that forces us to really question how society measures a person's worth. So is it the circumstances of your birth, or is it the content of your character? Let's get right into it. We are starting right in the middle of a totally desperate life-or-death situation. Imagine being Bhima. He's a warrior of just immeasurable prowess, but right now, he is trapped. And he isn't cornered by an army or anything. He's literally coiled within the body of a giant snake. And not just any snake, we're talking about a serpent with a body described as a mountain mass. Bhima calls out to his brother, Yudhishthira, uttering these absolutely chilling words, "This mighty being hath caught me for food." So the stakes are instantly set to maximum here. A brother is about to be eaten alive. So Yudhishthira sees his beloved brother in this horrific predicament and frantically tries to negotiate. He's offering a life or death ransom. He actually pleads with the monster, offering to go find some other food to appease its hunger, or even offering himself up in exchange. But the serpent just coldly refuses. It tells Yudhishthira to go away, warning him that if he sticks around, he's just going to be tomorrow's meal. The snake insists that Bhima is his ordained fare. He's waited a really long time for this specific meal, and there is no way he's letting him go. Moving into Section 1, A Fallen King's Riddle, Nahusha's Backstory. We quickly learn that this creature is no ordinary beast of the forest. Let's walk through this timeline, because it reveals a pretty shocking backstory. When Yudhishthira asks the serpent who he truly is, the snake drops a bomb. He's actually the royal sage Nahusha, an ancestor of Yudhishthira himself. Starting at the beginning, Nahusha was a king who acquired permanent dominion over all three worlds through sacrifices, asceticism, and sheer prowess. But then, things take a turn. He became totally intoxicated by his supremacy. The power just went straight to his head, to the point where he actually forced thousands of Brahmanas to physically carry his chair. Naturally, this supreme arrogance leads to him insulting those Brahmanas, which immediately results in the final phase. The sage Agastya curses him to fall from grace and become a snake. It is a stark, brutal reminder that the abuse of power always has consequences, no matter how high up you are. But here's the catch. The curse came with a loophole, and this brings us to the ultimate test of wits. The cursed King Nahusha gives Yudhishthira a terrifying ultimatum. He says, if you answer the questions put by me today, then I'll deliver your brother. So, Bhima's life hinges entirely on Yudhishthira's ability to answer incredibly complex philosophical questions right there on the spot. No weapons, no backup armies, just a pure intellectual battle for survival. Section 2. What makes a Brahmana? The core debate. We are now entering the high-stakes climax between the cursed king and the desperate brother. This is the riddle Nahusha throws down. Who is a Brahmana and what should be known? I really want you to think about this for a second. In the context of ancient Indian society, a Brahmana was considered the absolute highest of the four social orders, and this was traditionally defined by birth. So Nahusha is asking a deeply loaded question about the very fabric of their entire social hierarchy. How would you even begin to answer this if your brother's life depended on it? Well, here is Yudhishthira's profound response. Notice what's missing here. He doesn't mention lineage. He doesn't bring up a family tree at all. Instead, he defines a Brahmana entirely by specific virtues: truth, charity, forgiveness, good conduct, benevolence, observance of rites, and mercy. He asserts that the wise say this is what makes a Brahmana. It is a stunning, complete pivot away from biological birthright, focusing entirely on personal character and action. Yudhishthira then tackles the second part of the riddle. What should be known? He answers that one must know the supreme Brahma. He describes it as a state in which there is absolutely neither happiness nor misery. It's the ultimate liberation, where a being is just no longer affected by the miseries of existence. So he has laid all his intellectual cards on the table here. A Brahmana is defined strictly by virtue, and the ultimate truth is a state completely devoid of both joy and sorrow. But Nahusha is a formidable intellectual opponent, right? He strikes back really sharply with two major counter-arguments. First, Nahusha points out that all those noble virtues Yudhishthira just listed, truth, charity, forgiveness, they are often seen even in a sudra, which is the lowest of the four traditional orders. And second, regarding the supreme Brahma, Nahusha argues that it's impossible. He says literally nothing exists that is completely devoid of both happiness and misery. He is basically telling Yudhishthira, your definitions just don't hold up to reality. So let's look at how Yudhishthira defends his theology using a really brilliant logical counter. He tackles the happiness and misery problem with the heat and cold analogy. Yudhishthira argues that just as cold cannot exist in heat and heat cannot exist in cold, there must naturally be a state or an object in which neither happiness nor misery can exist. He uses the mutually exclusive nature of opposites in the physical world to prove the possibility of a spiritual state that transcends both. It's an airtight, elegant defense of his theology. Which brings us to section 3, conduct over caste, a radical leveling. This is where the argument becomes incredibly explosive from a sociological standpoint. And this brilliantly illustrates Yudhishthira's ultimate mic drop moment. He doesn't back down from Nahusha's observation about Sudras having virtues, he leans into it completely. Yudhishthira boldly states that if those noble virtues are seen in a Sudra, then that person literally is a Brahmana, period. And conversely, if a person is born a Brahmana but entirely lacks these qualities, then people term him a Sudra. He explicitly states that a Sudra is not a Sudra by birth alone, nor is a Brahmana by birth alone. It is a radical leveling of the social playing field based 100% on how a person behaves. And the snake is tracking with this logic perfectly. Nahusha absorbs this and replies with a profound realization. He says that if you recognize someone as a Brahmana purely by their characteristics, then the whole distinction of caste becomes completely futile as long as conduct doesn't come into play. Nahusha is realizing the sheer magnitude of Yudhishthira's argument here. If your characteristics define you, then your birthright, your caste, is entirely meaningless without good conduct to back it up. To cement his point, Yudhishthira makes a remarkably modern observation. He argues that human society is promiscuously mixed. He tells the serpent that across all 4 orders, men and women have intermingled and had offspring together for generations upon generations. Because of this massive historical blending, Yudhishthira argues that it is practically impossible to ascertain anyone's true, pure biological caste anyway. Now, what's really fascinating here is how Yudhishthira completely dismantles the idea of inherent biological differences between social classes. He basically lists out our shared humanity across all orders. Speech is common to all of us. Sexual intercourse is common. The profound everyday realities of birth and death are common to everyone. He even notes that the wise rishis acknowledge this shared humanity in the very wording of their sacrifices. He is proving that fundamentally, underneath all the social labels, we are all exactly the same creature. This leads us straight into the resolution of our narrative. Section 4, the power of character and the true measure of a person. To put the final nail in the coffin of Birthright, Yudhishthira traces the steps of human birth itself. Let's look at this process. The natal ceremony happens before the umbilical cord is even cut. In that raw, entirely human moment, the mother acts as the deity and the father as the priest. And most importantly, every single person, regardless of their family, is considered a Sudra, meaning uninitiated, until they learn the Vedas and actually develop their character. Everyone starts at the exact same baseline. Birth alone grants absolutely zero special spiritual status. To provide ultimate authority to his argument, Yudhishthira actually cites Swayambhuva Manu, bringing up a really powerful point. Mixed castes are to be regarded as better than the other classes if those upper classes do not conform to the rules of good conduct. So, the crucial takeaway is this. Pure virtue always beats pure lineage. A person of a mixed or lower caste who acts purely and virtuously is fundamentally superior to a person of a high caste who behaves terribly. Good conduct is the ultimate metric. The intellectual battle is over, and the tension finally breaks. The serpent, Nahusha, is completely satisfied. He is so moved and so humbled by the incredible depth of Yudhishthira's wisdom that he admits defeat. He tells Yudhishthira that having listened to these profound words, he just can no longer eat his brother. Bhima is set free. Yudhishthira's intellect and his unwavering belief in the supremacy of virtue over birth literally saves his brother's life. Which brings us to the core message of this entire text. It's beautifully summarized in this final thought from Yudhishthira. Character is the chief essential requisite. This ancient text reaches out across millennia to ask us a question that is just as vital today as it was back then. It challenges us to look in the mirror and really examine how we view society. So I'll leave you with this to ponder. In your own life, in your own community, do you judge others by the circumstances of their origins, or do you measure them by the true chief requisite, the actual content of their character? Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.